So first things first, I just want to start by saying that if you haven't seen the 1 hour seminar that I did at South Melbourne about a week or two ago, it's probably worthwhile going back and finding that video on Facebook. I think we put it up through YouTube. It covers a lot of stuff on the basic macronutrients like protein, carbohydrates, fats, nutrition timing. I sort of go through some of the tips that I use on the types of foods that we sort of use to maximize performance, recovery, health, and body composition, so your lean muscle mass and burning of body fat. So first things first, what I wanted to sort of start with was I thought I'd go through a few things that I've just got sitting here at home that I use all the time and that I frequently implement into a client's nutrition plan when I'm writing it up for them. So I'm going to start with water because to me it's sort of the most fundamental of things. And one of the tips that I always give my clients is like Melbourne water is fluoridated. So the government's decided that we'll fluoridate the water because it's fluoride is supposedly supposed to help with preventing dental cavities and looking after oral hygiene and dental health. So I actually did a stint in the dental industry, and to be honest with you, I believe that fluoridating the water is a bunch of BS. I don't think it works at all. And in respect to health, I think it can have some serious negative impacts, and it's something that I sort of try to get out there, that perhaps if we get the option of getting water from non-tap sources as frequent as possible, I think it's a good idea. So one of the things that I use is a reverse osmosis water. So this here is called Puro, and you can see it's sort of in a wine casket. That's about 10 litres there. You can pick it up from like a Woolies or something like that for around about $7. And what reverse osmosis means, it's a method of filtration where they basically get everything out of the water. Okay, so they'll get like a lot of impurities, heavy metals, like just like remnants of like rubbish like that runs into the water and stuff like that, and it'll get rid of all the fluoride and stuff out of it as well. So what I would generally recommend is using that as your source of water, and you can remineralize it, which means you can put some of the stuff back in. Because we've taken everything out, it's a good idea to put some minerals back in. And the best way to do that is something like like a Himalayan sea salt, okay, or maybe like a Celtic sea salt. So you can see that, hopefully, that's Himalayan stuff's kind of pink, and it's a broad spectrum salt. So it's not just sodium chloride, which is your table salt. I didn't bring one of those. This is a full spectrum salt, so you'll have like dozens and dozens of minerals, which is what is representative of what we want to find in nature, and not just going for the refined white stuff that we're used to seeing as table salt. So salt is important. It's definitely something that if you're in a caloric deficit, and I sort of mentioned this in my other seminar, I really discourage going low salt and low carbohydrate or low fat. It's a really bad combination for your adrenal glands in terms of like managing your stress and how well your body's doing whilst you're dieting, for instance. So just on water, one of the reasons, that fluoride will come into that is that fluoride interferes with your iodine functioning in the body. So iodine is another mineral that is incredibly important for your thyroid function, and your thyroid sort of regulates your metabolic rate for you. So it works like a thermostat as such. So when we're looking at fat loss and metabolic rate, the capacity to have energy, produce energy, feel good, and burn fat, you want optimal thyroid function, okay? So iodine is critical to that. Now, I prepared something a little bit earlier, so this is what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. I've already stuck into it. I don't know if you guys can see. Sorry, I think it's muted. What I've got there is a marinara mix, okay, with some oysters. So I've got the oysters, I've got some natural, and I made some up Kilpatrick. Marinara mix, I just spiced it with some herbs, some black pepper, some sea salt, and stuff like that, and put it on a better salad. That is an incredible meal for someone doing some serious training and like looking at optimizing your health. So the thing, like, as if you attended the seminar at South Melbourne, or if you want to watch it online, you'll know that oysters are my #1 food, go-to food for fat burning. Okay, they are literally pound for pound the best source of nutrients in the world. You've got a ton of iodine, so we're looking at thyroid. You've got a ton of selenium, that's going to help out with thyroid as well. Heaps of B12. B12 is critical for your energy levels, and heaps of omega-3. And omega-3, like any of your marine sources, they're really high, so anything that comes from the sea, this is where you tend to get that gathering of nutrients together. So I'm a big believer in getting optimal seafood and balancing out all the white meat and red meat that we tend to eat with a bunch of seafood. So I was listening to some resources today, actually read something this morning. The average intake of seafood for the average American over the course of a year was only like around about 6 kilos. And that, in comparison to the rest of the white meat and red meat, it's incredibly low. And it's getting lower as the years go on as well. So sorry if you can hear my cat meowing in the background. He's hungry. He can smell the fish. So look, in terms of when I'm designing a meal plan and I'm talking through with a client, I'll really try to assess just how interested they are in getting seafood. So I can see someone's popping up about heavy metals. That's a really good question. So I do talk a lot about heavy metals, and one of the best protection you actually have from heavy metal absorption is good supply of the rest of the minerals that are quite good for us. So iodine is one of those minerals. Okay, another one is magnesium, another one is zinc, another one is selenium. So in and of itself, seafood is kind of protective of the toxicity that's contained within the seafood. So I know that can sound a little bit confusing, and heavy metal toxicity is something we should probably definitely take seriously. And there's some certain fish that are a little bit not off limits, but I discourage the eating them all the time, and that will be the really big fish. Okay, so things like tuna. If you've ever seen the size of an actual tuna they're huge. They're like the size of sharks. So same with shark and swordfish. So those 3 fish, they're the bigger they are, the more they sort of eat up the smaller fish in the food chain, and they will accumulate those heavy metals in there. So that's one thing to bear in mind, is to stick with the smaller fish. So here in Melbourne, actually, let's just talk about all Australia, actually. Probably the go-to fish that I recommend fairly regularly are snapper, barramundi, what else do we go with? Flathead, barramundi, snapper. Yeah, those are probably the main ones I recommend. Salmon's an interesting one. I've kind of changed my tune a tiny bit, and so if anyone's on there that's heard me in my seminars before, I've kind of been more against farmed fish than wild caught fish. So in Australia, pretty much all of the salmon you get and the ocean trout will be farmed down in Tasmania. And I've spoken to some of the fish guys that have been down there, and they've actually seen these fish farms, and they haven't had the best things to say about it. In saying that, though, I've come across some experts in the industry and managed to have conversations with them, and they're kind of saying that the benefits are almost outweighing the costs a little bit. So I have prepared myself some salmon tonight as a little bit of a main to go after my entree, with some wild rice and some salad there. Salmon's incredibly high in your omega-3. It's a really fatty fish, so that's another benefit with the nutrients there. So what else have I got here to show you guys? We've talked about water, talked about seafood. Those are the 2 main things I would start with when it comes to looking at the basics of nutrition and training. Okay. Next, my second favorite food for, let's say, fat loss, or in like when you're dieting, so in a caloric deficit, is eggs. Okay. And there you go. Free range eggs. If you can get organic eggs, that's great. I'm going to just jump straight in now and give you my 2 cents and my beliefs on the yolks, because everyone's going to say, oh, what about all the yolks? I did a video blog, I don't know if you guys saw, about fats, and I sort of touched on it there, that like the whole fat phobia side of things, and eating cholesterol and it being reflective of your cholesterol in your blood going up and being a risk factor for cardiovascular disease and atherosclerosis is kind of banana now. Like it's been shown that the correlations are just very weak at best, and there's so many other causative factors and implications that it's not something I run with. It's not something that I am overly concerned about. The yolks pack an incredible amount of nutrition. So when you're on, the fewer calories you're on, or the fewer the amount of food or energy coming into your body, that's when you really want to consider getting the best nutrition possible. So if you've got 1,500 calories to play around with, if I'm looking after a female client and she's on 1,500 calories, you can be guaranteed that I really encourage the best nutrition we can possibly get into her. If I'm working with someone who's on 3,000 calories, then we've got a lot of room to play with. So if you've got 1,500 calories of good stuff coming in and you've got 1,500 calories of food that's more barren in terms of its nutrients, I'm not that concerned, because obviously we're still getting an adequate amount of nutrition. So whilst we're on bang for buck, okay, I'm not going to touch on basic foods because I've done that in the other video that's up. It's an hour long. It touches on a lot of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. What I do have here is some of the things I use. Okay, one thing, I highly recommend coconut oil. Okay, this most people are already onto this. Okay, this is just for those of you who haven't yet got onto it. In terms of cooking, it is the least oxidizable oil that you'll have. So when you heat your pan, if you're frying something, this is the oil to go to, because under heat it gets damaged the least out of any oil. So if you were to scale it backwards from there, you would be looking at coconut oil being right at the top, macadamia oil being slightly below that, butter being probably a little bit somewhere in the middle. Then you'd start heading into your extra virgin olive oils, vegetable oils, and then all the way down to the really easily oxidizable stuff like fish oil and flaxseed oil. So what that means is the less oxidizable stuff like butter and coconut oil, they're my go-to stuff for any kind of frying. Extra virgin olive oil, I'm still a fan, but I will cook with it very, very rarely, and it will usually be for something that's only cooked for a light period of time, so it's getting under heat for less time. Things like fish oil, you'll never ever cook. In fact, I just recommend keeping them in the refrigerator. And if you're using it as a supplement, sorry, we're talking about obviously, I'd be going with a good brand. So fish oil, omega-3, is highly, highly oxidizable. So if oxygen, light, or heat get to it, it's done. It's rancid. You don't want to put that stuff in your body. When I worked in supplement stores, which I did for 10 years, it was one of those things I was very inflexible on my recommendations. I used to say, look, you buy and purchase the fish oil that you can spend the most amount of money on, and get the quality, I should say, rather than spending the most amount of money. Get the best quality fish oil you can buy within your budget and that you can get from a trusted source. Okay, because some of these fish oils that are coming out at such a really cheap purchase price, they worry me in terms of the quality control. So yeah, so coconut oil, definitely something that I think everyone should have. It looks like a solid, like it does now, like just as butter does at room temperature. Once it gets over 25 degrees, like say in summer here, it's going to look like a clear liquid. Okay, and it can set and reset, and it doesn't really, it doesn't go off. It's got a very long expiry date and stuff like that. So that's one thing I highly recommend you all sort of get into. Second thing is, obviously I showed you the sea salt. Chuck your table salt out. If it's just the white stuff, the sodium chloride, get yourself a full spectrum salt. Okay, it's where you want to be at. It's more like how you'll find it in nature, and it gives your body a full gamut of nutrition. This is an interesting one. This got brought to my attention by a client. This is why I love doing consults, because I love learning as much as everyone else does. This stuff's called konjac. Okay, it's like, this one's a rice style one. You can get noodles and pasta, fettuccine and stuff like that. But literally, this is basically just fiber and really water. Okay, it's very low in the carbohydrates. Like you can see here, I'm looking, there's 2 servings in this packet, and it's 12 calories per serving. So I've actually been using that a little bit as an alternative to rice when I'm having my lower carbohydrate meals and when I've been wanting to fill myself up. The only downside to me is I ate a lot of food, and that's $3 a pack. But if it came down to a client wanting to feel full, and I was having this conversation with a couple of the girls at the gym today about what do they think about it, and they say, yeah, for $3, if I got to have a meal which I felt was more like some mince with some konjac and maybe some salad, like creating like a bit of a bolognese with salad on the side, in preference to just having the mince with the salad, they pay the $3. Okay, so that can be a real good go-to item if you want to fill out the meal a little bit. Plus, it gives you your fiber. If you're having trouble hitting your fiber targets, go for something like that. What am I going to say next? I'm a big one for spices in general, okay, herbs and spices. So there's some go-to stuff that go in all my coaching plans, and that is cinnamon, which, here we go. Cinnamon. If you're using protein shakes, please throw cinnamon, half a teaspoon of cinnamon in each shake, okay? A, it tastes great. It tastes like a chai. B, it regulates your blood sugar levels. It's great for digestion. It's a circulatory, so it aids in the circulation and stuff like that. And it's very, very good for just balancing blood sugars, balancing energy levels and stuff. Ginger, that's another one. I actually throw ginger in my shakes as well. So ginger, good in terms of like inflammation, great in terms of settling any nausea and stuff like that. Circulatory, warming. Come winter, these two sort of spices, these are the things I'll throw in my shakes. Now, I know ginger might sound a little bit weird, but if you've got a chocolate protein shake and you throw ginger in it, I don't know if any of you have had that chocolate ginger lolly, but it actually tastes really, really nice. Turmeric. Okay, turmeric is probably one of my go-to #1 spices on the planet. The research being done on turmeric is just out of this world, okay? It's heaps being done on it. It's being shown to be like great antioxidant. They're using it in cancer research. They're comparing it to like some of the most potent fat burners ever discovered in the way it works. The trouble becomes the devil's in the dosage. You need a fair bit of the dose to get what some of the science is testing it on. But in saying that, I still think there's benefits of getting it at a normal level that we're going to get it by using it as a spice in foods. For any of you guys, I'm not exactly a chef, but so I'll use my spices more as a way to get nutrition than to make stuff taste amazingly incredible and go to all that effort. But I'll use turmeric, or even, that's actually probably what I use more so. That is, what does that say? Clove of India curry powder. And that's a combination of coriander, turmeric, fennel, black pepper, cumin, chili, fenugreek, garlic, ginger, and salt. That's it. That in a mince with a tiny bit of Napoli sauce. I use that as like a almost like a bolognese style sauce. It's still very low in carbohydrate, and I'll have that with either salad or having some carbohydrates and make it into a good post-workout meal. That again in winter, it's incredibly warming. It's one of the mince with spices is one of the few meals that I actually enjoy cold because I don't use a lot of microwaves to microwave my food up at work and stuff like that. So getting into a cold chicken breast or cold fish, that's pretty disgusting. Even cold steak can be a little bit of work. Mince is pretty easy to eat even when it's cold, so I enjoy that. Last thing, guys, I wanted to touch on was maybe some teas. So tea is probably one of the, it's fairly underrated, I suppose, because it seems like a little bit old school, but teas are a really good source of ways to get more herbs and stuff into your nutrition. So one of the things I'm a big favorite of is licorice. Okay, so that's a, so you can see that flavor. That's a combination of licorice and mint. So licorice is very good for the adrenal glands. So adrenals, when you're looking after your stress or you're feeling a bit stressed out or got a lot of workload on, or you've got a little bit of the, the winter blues and low energy and stuff like that, licorice is not so much the lollies, because the lollies are just full of sugar with a little bit of the actual licorice plant. But licorice tea, A, it tastes good, B, it tastes sweet. Okay, so if you have a sweet tooth, I know it's not chocolate or anything like that, but it's definitely something. Cinnamon tea, okay, again, I'll be getting cinnamon any which way I can. It's not unusual for me, not that I recommend going excessive in anything, but I'll use like one of those probably every fortnight, okay, and I don't really consider that excessive. What else have I got to show you? Chocolate's on my list of goodies, okay, so something like a Lindt 85% cocoa. that's awesome. Just bear in mind, like two blocks of a lint, they're like a little bit bigger blocks. That's about 120 calories. So if you're trying to fit that into your macros or something like that, it can be done, but it's just not a great deal. I do have some of this. My partner Evelyn, she's been resorting to these every now and then. She asked me to actually show you guys. This is Skinny Cow. I think Trav's done a something on this as well. These are like a little dessert, which they tend to use less carbohydrates and sugar and stuff like that. So one of these is only 120 cal as well. So to give you an idea, you could have like a little sort of ice cream thing or 2 slices of chocolate if you had 120 calories to play with. There's no protein in them. They're obviously just like some carbs and some fats. But I'll admit, I love my chocolate, and I'll always find a way to fit that in at the end of the night and go from there. Anyway, guys, that's kind of all I had here to show you guys. Have we got any? So I'm just going through and have a look at any questions. No, anyone got any questions? You want to write it in now? Oh, here we go. How much water? Water's a very individual thing. Like, I used to kind of set big targets for people until I realized that, again, I think it's such an individualistic thing. I think definitely you want to consider how much you sweat during training. Okay, the more you sweat, the more water you should drink to replace it. The more diuretics you have, so the more caffeine, the more tea, so stuff that flushes water out of the body, the more water you should obviously have. The less sleep you have, the more water you should have. You'll be more dehydrated. Fish oil brands, there's some good stuff out there. Look, I used a fair bit of Pure Pharma. I used a fair bit of Bioceuticals. I used a bit of Ethical Nutrients, which that's probably one of the biggest ones you'll recognize from the InHealth Plus range on TV. They do a ton of advertising. If you're going to use a liquid fish oil, like Ethical Nutrients do a liquid fish oil, my advice is treat it as a fresh food that has to be thrown out after 4 weeks. Okay? Same as flaxseed oil. Sorry, I'll touch on that too. If any of you guys have flaxseed oil or fish oil and you're not great at taking your supplements, I'd suggest just to go to capsules. Okay? Because the last thing you want to be doing is putting rancid fats in your body. Okay? And fish oil and flaxseed oil, which are omega-3s, highly, highly oxidizable, which means easily made rancid. In terms of how do we spot a good fish oil, I would be going to someone you trust in a health food store rather than shopping online, first of all, to have a conversation with someone in person. I can't remember all the brands off the top of my head, but I'd be definitely going from something that's not produced out of Asia or South America. Asia and South America, just you guys know, don't really have the same kind of quality. It's been banned here like 30 or 40 years ago. Is there a difference between fresh and dry ginger? That's a good question. I don't really know the answer to that off the top of my head, sorry. I would always go fresh if you do it. So, like, I use fresh ginger and even fresh turmeric when I go to the health food shop in mints. What do I think of alkaline water? Look, alkaline water, I used to be on that bandwagon a long time ago. I'm not so much anymore. But what I do like is I just said, oh, there we go. Hopefully you can hear me now, guys. Sorry about that. Yeah, in terms of alkaline water, I used to be on the bandwagon, not so much anymore. What I'd really look for now is high mineral content through your food. So the stuff that I mentioned before, like magnesium, iodine, things like calcium, iron, getting all those minerals which are alkalizing through your food content, I like. If you can't get it, then yeah, I don't see any problem with using alkaline water. Or even supplements that claim to be alkalizing, so like your wheatgrass, barley grass, spirulina, anything that's green, generally will have an alkalizing effect on the body. That goes for your vegetables and supplements and stuff like that as well. But my main thing is probably to look for a water, like I said, reverse osmosis. You can buy a reverse osmosis filtration setup, but it's very expensive. I think you're looking around at the $2,000 to $3,000 mark. Completely up to yourself whether you'd consider something like that. But the Puro is pretty cheap, $8 for 10 liters. Sweeteners, so stevia and agave. Stevia I love, agave I hate. That's it in a nutshell. Stevia I find good. Agave, like just a form of a type of sugar that I don't think is really good for the body to get in a concentrated form. So I'm not totally anti-fructose, which is the fruit sugar that you get in fruit, but I think if you're going to have it in its package, which is fruit, the whole food. And if you go back and listen to my nutrition seminar, you guys know that I believe in seasonal eating, because I believe the body uses food differently because it knows if you're in winter or it knows if you're in summer. So I encourage more fruits throughout, generally if they're summer fruits throughout summer. Through winter, I encourage your carbohydrates probably to come more so from starchy stuff that's going to help your body stay warmer. So in my experience, and this is just my experience, you're going to get an opinion, I'll find that people respond better to things like rice or quinoa or potatoes, sweet potato, stuff like that during winter. And if they want their fruits, more of them through summer. We have recommended 6 fish oil capsules a day in the nutritional guidelines. I think that's cool. The one thing when you're going to use a fish oil supplement that I'm a big believer of is in nature, you'll find omega-3 will come with iodine. And iodine, the mineral, is protective of the DHA, which is the type, one of the omega-3s in fish oil. When you get it in nature. So when you get it in a fish oil supplement, I don't think there's any iodine in it. So for me, if you're going to have a lot of fish oil, my recommendation would be not necessarily to use an iodine supplement, but consider getting more seafood to get that. So easy options here are, I'll often prescribe that someone gets some sushi fairly regularly. The nori that they wrap the sushi with is really high in iodine, and you don't even need a lot of it. You could be having like 2 or 3 pieces of sushi a week, and that would give you a ton of iodine, which I would recommend if you're using fish oil on the regular. Magnesium, I left my magnesium in my bag, sorry. I'm a huge believer in if you can't get adequate magnesium through diet, and it is incredibly hard in Australia. I think the stats were something like we have the 3rd lowest magnesium content in our soil in the world, behind Africa and America. That was done by the WHO back in 2004. So that's a pretty bad statistic on, in reflection of the soil and what we've done to the soil. And magnesium is critical. It does over 300 enzymatic steps in the body. For someone who trains, it's incredibly important for detoxification, for the musculoskeletal system, for the nervous system. You'll hear it being touted as the great muscle relaxant. I definitely need magnesium supplements. I find a massive difference with it. It is one of those ones which I tend to recommend supplements because I just cannot seem to get enough. No matter what kind of nutrition plan I head up, if I'm dealing with a fit person who's got a fairly high workload, it's just too hard to get too much. In terms of what type, a couple of brands off the top of my head. I use Fusion, which are a crew out of Byron Bay. They do all their stuff is incredible quality. I used to sell tons of that. They do a magnesium tablet that's 200 milligrams of very easily absorbed magnesium. You can get very cheap magnesiums in the supermarket. They'll tend to be magnesium oxide or magnesium carbonate. Those two are quite heavy in terms of the molecular structure. Going to be fine for some people. For others, they're not going to absorb too well. And generally, if you use the dosage up around 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams, in those tablets, they can also be used as a laxative. Like we used to use that to help someone loosen their bowels because it's a relaxant, and you would actually use it as a laxative. More gentle than like a pharmaceutical laxative, generally speaking. What else have we got here? Sorry, guys. Cool. Got someone here who's got low. What have I got? Low iron. So low iron's a tricky one. That's probably something, in order to make any recommendations, probably going to take a little bit more of a individualized conversation. But obviously meats are important. Your vitamin Bs and Cs, which are your cofactors, are really important for that as well. But there's just probably a bunch of other things to consider before going too high into that. Any more questions, guys? No? Cool. Okay. Thanks, guys. That was great. Yeah, I'll leave you with that. Look, if any of you guys are getting more questions, get me in the Facebook group or get a hold. If you're from Southers, come and grab me, and we'll go from there. I'm more than happy to continue any of the conversations that we've sparked up, and do it at a later date. Now I'm going to get stuck into my entree and my dinner. Have a good night. See ya.